for anybody that's been in this for any length of time knows that the courts, the child protective services, the governmental agencies that are in this are not the answer to this. And to be able to disengage from that and to start to change in a bounded way, to start to create good boundaries, to reduce communications, to make communications succinct and child-centric, and to start to move back into the mainstream of their life is the important pieces here.
Welcome to the Divorce Survival Guide podcast, where we have open and honest conversations about co-parenting, separation, divorce, and the hardest question of all, should you stay or should you go? I'm Kate Anthony, your divorce survival guide, and I'm here to help you navigate some of the roughest waters you've ever swum in and answer some of your toughest questions. I've been to hell and back, and now it's my mission in life to help you get to the other side of this process with your sanity and your heart intact.
Hey everyone, welcome back. I am off this week to Sedona, Arizona with my Unbreakable Retreaters, and I am so excited about what's to come. And I will tell you all about it next week. I will report on it so that y'all can, start planning for the next one for those of you who have not been able to attend this time. But I'm excited to head off into the incredible spiritual vortex of Sedona and absorb some of the incredible energy and all of the yummy goodness that Sedona has to offer, as well as connecting with these beautiful women that I'm going to be spending some time with when we're there. But for today, we have Brook Olsen with me. Brook is a certified parenting educator, a divorce coach, and author of The Black Hole of High Conflict. And in this conversation, we're talking about what happens when you stop feeding the conflict. I often talk about dropping the rope, right? This is a big conversation about dropping the rope and why parallel parenting is often the best way forward, and how choosing not to engage can offer so much clarity for you in this process. Brook offers a framework that it's not just theory, it is practical, it's actionable, especially when the legal system isn't exactly on your side. This is a really cool kind of crossover episode. So if you enjoy what we talk about today, be sure to go and find our conversation tomorrow on Brook's podcast. So we did a bit of a podcasting swap. Tomorrow, I will be, my episode with him on his show is going to air. So back to back, you get me and Brook, and it's a really good, fun, juicy conversation all around on both shows. And we talk about different things. So some similar and some different, but of course, with each of us hosting and switching interview spots. So anyway, without further ado, here's my conversation with Brook Olsen. Brook, thank you so much for coming on to my show. This is sort of a two-parter that we're doing in no particular order. It's so great to have you on my show.
Thanks for having me.
So you're like a multi-hyphenate. You are a parenting educator. You are a divorce mediator, a divorce coach, an author, and all of the things. One of your specialties is dealing with high conflict personalities. So what's your approach to that?
When we're talking about high conflict custody and divorce stuff, oftentimes there's a high conflict personality that's involved. We can look at that through a lot of different lenses. And what I try to do is lean away from some of the labelings that are out there and really focus on the behaviors of those labels. It's really super easy for people to fall into the trap of blaming, the trap of being a victim in this stuff. And that isn't to say that they haven't been victimized by the behavior, But to be stuck in that means that it becomes repetitive. That's where their mindset is. That's where they identify themselves as. And in order to really move through this stuff, there has to be agency. Was it that Eleanor Roosevelt said, if you are a victim, and I'm paraphrasing, if you can't take responsibility for it, you'll always be a victim to it.
Mm-hmm. Right, right.
And the approach for me is to, okay, let's start to look at what is happening here. Let's look at the behavior. Let's look at how the person is stuck in that behavior, what they bring to that historically, and start to break the patterns. And by taking responsibility for that, they're not in that trap of the other person or having some expectation that the other person is going to change, that the courts are going to help them with this, that somebody is going to come to the rescue.
Yes.
Because that's not on the table. For anybody that's been in this for any length of time knows that the courts, the child protective services, the governmental agencies that are in this are not the answer to this. And to be able to disengage from that and to start to change in a bounded way, to start to create good boundaries, to reduce communications, to make communications succinct and child-centric, and to start to move back into the mainstream of their life is the important pieces here.
Absolutely. And, one of the things you said at the beginning, which I think is very important, is that in these high conflict relationships or dynamics, there's usually one person who is high conflict, right? And I think it's really important that people recognize that it is usually an extension of a longer term abusive relationship. This is not high conflict. It's rarely two people in conflict. It's one person inciting it, and often the other person reacting to it in a way that is not helpful.
Yeah. And just to modify that a little bit, Kate, the dynamic is the problem, because we've got a high conflict personality that is driving the behavior, but the conflict requires that other person's engagement in that. It requires their capitulation to it, their interaction with it.
Right.
And I look at it from the perspective of, how do you disengage from it? As a matter of fact, the mantra that I put to people consistently is disengage, disengage, disengage. And that is a laddering of disengagement. It's not just a repetitive piece. It's becoming more competent in that process and really understanding that as you disengage, that doesn't mean things are going to get easier. As a matter of fact, as you start to disengage, things are probably going to get harder. And
that's
that
right.
The other person is going to try to hold you in that old dynamic as you try to move away from it. So they're going to do everything that they can to bring you back in, and they're going to escalate. So the disengagement process becomes one of understanding that, but also of having the competency, the tolerance levels to stay self-regulated in the process so you can move forward. Without that, the kids don't have anybody hanging in there with them that can help them navigate it.
Absolutely. And I love that you talk about it like it's a laddering. Like, this isn't a, when you this is a boundary, right? This is really big boundary work. And so if you've never set a boundary before in your life, and you're starting here, first of all, yay, congratulations, amazing. Secondly, it's also going to be sort of probably exponentially more difficult because you don't have a lot of experience with this, and you're going to probably receive more resistance to it than you've ever experienced, right? And the thing about boundaries is that you don't, they're like, well, I set a boundary with him and he just didn't listen. Well, it's like, well, then you didn't set a boundary, right? Because boundary work requires reinforcement.
And the people that are in these situations and don't know how to set boundaries are often people pleasers by nature. They're non-confrontational. They don't deal with hard conversations very well. And they have a tendency to slink away into the corner. And what's needed in this is a level of grit, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
That place where, yeah, this is hard and I don't want to do this. And I'd rather go someplace else and not do this.
Mm-hmm.
But to stand in that level of sensation for long periods of time, people start to understand that they do have the capacity, that they can tolerate the sensation of this, because truly, this is a nervous system interpretation of an incident.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
as a person takes in that stimulus, they are interpreting what is actually happening there. And sometimes what is happening isn't happening, or what they perceive as happening isn't
Right.
happening.
Sure.
And when they can start to adjust that into nothing bad's going to happen here. And honestly, most of the time, that is the truth, that
Mm-hmm.
it is just a matter of, yeah, they're angry. So what?
And you also have to take that, be very careful with that. Like, we don't want to be like, most of the time nothing happens. And it's true. But, there are times when the abuser will flip. And so we have to take those steps very cautiously.
Absolutely.
Which is why working with someone like you, like me, who actually know when danger might be lurking.
Right. And to be able to put in the guardrails for when that does happen. I mean, that's certainly part of the conversation, and to really parse it out so we can see the different components of the relationship and have some level of predictability about what happens next. So we can put those guardrails in, so we cannot overstep that moment. So that person has a plan of
Right.
when things go in a particular direction, that they know where they're going to go with that, rather than just step on the landmine.
That's exactly right. And, so much of this, I mean, you talked about the nervous system activation. And I think that so much of this, you cannot be objective enough when your nervous system is completely activated. You can't be objective enough to discern in that way, which is why this working with the nervous system activation and deactivation or de-escalation is so important, because when we're activated, we can't discern what's safe, what's not safe. Everything feels like it's not safe. So can you talk a little bit more about nervous system activation and regulating?
Yeah, so trauma is at the center of most of this stuff. And it's childhood trauma. It's stuff that wasn't addressed, and the person doesn't have the skill sets inherent in their system to be able to navigate this stuff.
Right.
So what I like to do is bring in my knowledge of somatics, body awareness, and to help my clients notice the activation, and then to be able to help them orient to the here and now, because the activation has very little to do with the here and now.
That's right.
And when they can see the disconnect with the two and be able to be in the moment of just navigating that and learning how to navigate that somatic activation, they start to get a skill set of, oh, that's not now. Oh, that happened over there. Oh, that's an experience that they're having, but I'm in this room and there's nothing here attacking me. And I don't have to get into the future of catastrophic thought, because that takes me down another road of activation that has no relevance about how to problem solve what's in front of me right now. And when they've got a touchstone like yourself or myself, that they can come in and they can go, okay, this is what's going on. And we can bring them back into the realities of what can happen or what should happen next, or where they can navigate into their mainstream. Then they start to install the template of nervous system self-regulation.
Yes. I like that. I like the way you put that, but you can install the template, right? Because then it is just a matter of, oh, right, now my nervous system actually knows how to do this, right? I Oh, right. I know how to do this. Oh, right. I've done this before. I have a template for this. Because until this, and to give yourself grace, like if you don't have a template for this, then it's fully understandable that you would be having the reactions that you're having. And let's have some grace and some compassion for that. And then we move into, oh, okay, now I know what to do. Let me learn this skill.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of the things that I find that happens so often here, and it's frustrating for me, and I'm sure that you have the same experience, is people will come and they want somebody else to do this for them. They don't want to take the steps that are needed to actually step into that place of self-responsibility and to do the work that's required of it. And that's not a judgment on my part, but that's just an observation of the lack of capacity that they're carrying in that moment. And when people are in that place, there's such a level of lack of agency and a victim sense of, I can't do this.
Yeah.
And that has to be navigated in a way that says the importance of this has twofold to me. One, I said this earlier, we've got to get back into the mainstream of our life. We've got to be in that place where life has a flow to it. And as an adult, as a parent, that's a responsibility that we have, that if we don't do it, we are relegating our children to repeating this piece and of them going down the same road because they don't have a model.
That's right.
They don't have a place to implant the neural pathways to navigate this stuff. And they don't get that from anybody other than their parent or a mentor, if that happens to be in their world, an aunt, an uncle, somebody that may be there. But the parent, that one parent, has that burden, that responsibility to make that shift. And when we're talking about the level of activation in the system, the level of sensation that's up there of overwhelm that I can't do this, that's not something that somebody can navigate on their own. They can't navigate it on their own. If they think they can, they're making a huge mistake.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It's so important to have somebody who can be objective about this, to point things out and to guide you. Because when you are triggered, you're off, you're gone. And I agree with you that so many of our clients will come to us without these skills. And the real danger in not having these skills at this juncture is not just that you're going to continue to have a bad relationship, things are going to be, toxic for the rest of your life, right? If you're divorcing this person, come on, let's do this. Let's get out of the dynamic. But also, when you're activated like this, you start to look like, quote, the crazy one.
Right.
And this will have a more detrimental impact on your children if the legal system gets involved and thinks that you're actually the high conflict one, you're the danger to the kids, because none of us behave well when we're triggered, right? So we have to learn how to manage those triggers, really, so that we can be strategic, so that we can go into court with our heads on straight, so that we can protect our kids better.
The biology of this, the physiological components of how the brain works when we're activated, that's a fight-flight piece. That's the amygdala being hijacked. And there is absolutely no cognitive process available when we're in that. So to be able to come back into the cognitive brain and be in problem solving, we've got to settle that system down. We've got to have a skill set to be able to do that. Our listeners are coming to these podcasts. Come to your podcast, they come to my podcast, they come to a dozen other ones that are looking for solutions. And they're trying to take in this information. And a lot of the information that you and I talk about is congruent with itself. I mean, we are not on different pages. We have some different approaches here and there, but we're not on different pages. Where does the engagement happen from that spot of, oh, I want to learn something? Because this is informative.
That's
but
right.
It's not solution driven. It's
That's right.
information driven.
That's right.
Here we are. These are the things. How do we engage these people that are coming to these podcasts into making that step into actually doing something with it? Because without that action, they're just simply spinning their wheels.
I say that to on my podcast all the time. It's like, you can read all the books, you can listen to all the podcasts, but if you're not doing the work, you're really not affecting change on a true cellular, neural, biological level on yourself. And so when I say, work with me, I've got all these programs, I've got, it's not because I'm, of course I'm promoting my programs because I have a business to run here. But when you or I say that, it really does, it is because we're saying, this is the way you're going to affect real change in your life. This is how you do it. Because as you said, gathering information is great and it's important. And then what are you going to do with that? Because as long as it stays outside of yourself, there's no change.
There's got to be a strategic piece to this, and that is putting the pieces together. And again, having been through this myself, you have been through this yourself, the knowledge that we've gained along the way didn't happen because we didn't have help ourselves. We had people that were holding our hands, that were leading us through this, and we did our own explorations, and we got better at understanding what was here, and we really worked through this competency levels over the course of the many years that we've been doing this, and that's why we can help in the way that we have.
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. When I was on your show, we talked a lot about the disengagement piece. I call it dropping the rope. You call it disengage, right? We got to take a really quick break, but on the other side, I want to talk a little bit more about your process and how you work with clients. So we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. So guys, we all know divorce is hard. Co-parenting, even harder. That's why most of my clients use our Family Wizard, the #1 most referred co-parenting app out there. Our Family Wizard eliminates misunderstandings with a secure, uneditable messaging system, which is the best way to document communication for court. If you need to share schedules, expenses, or important updates, it's all in one place. No more he said, she said. Plus, with features like Tone Meter and detailed activity logs, it helps keep communication civil and accountable. When people know their messages are permanently recorded and reviewable, they tend to stay more in line. Courts, attorneys, and therapists recommend it because it works, helping co-parents stay organized and reduce conflict. So, ready for smoother co-parenting? Go to kateanthony.com/OFW today and take control of your communication. That's kateanthony.com/OFW. Divorce is hard. No question about it. The uncertainty, the isolation, it can feel like you're drowning. But you don't have to go through this alone. There's a place where you can gather with other women going through divorce and get expert advice from professionals like me. Phoenix Rising, a divorce empowerment collective. Phoenix Rising is an ongoing group coaching program designed to walk you through some of the hardest parts of your divorce in community with other women who are going through it too. In Phoenix Rising, you get 3 live coaching sessions with me every month, plus a guest expert call with a top industry professional every month. You'll learn exactly what to do, when and how, but more importantly, you'll have a community of women who truly understand. Because when women come together and share their stories, something powerful happens. We rise, we gain strength, we reclaim our voices, and we move forward, not just surviving, but thriving. Inside Phoenix Rising, you'll get expert guidance, a safe and supportive space, and the kind of sisterhood that changes everything. Enrollment is always open, so join us at kateanthony.com/decided today. That's kateanthony.com/decided, and we will welcome you with open arms. We are back with Brook Olsen. And before the break, we were talking about really doing the work, like actually getting down and dirty and doing the work, not just consuming, not being a consumer of the work, but a practitioner of the work.
No,
So
like
when you're working, thanks, I just made it up. When you're working with clients, Brooke, how do you work with them on this disengagement piece and the really shifting of these patterns that they have been engaged in, sometimes for 20, 30 years?
So first is identifying how engaged they are and how invested they are in the fight, and really pointing to the lack of movement in it other than the recapitulation of the fight in their dynamic. You've been doing this for how long, and it's changed how much? Let's start to look at doing it differently. And by doing it differently, we want to, again, install this template of disengagement. But that really means that they have to be self-aware of what's going on physiologically for them. So I look at the disengagement conversation from a couple of different models. One is awareness, acceptance, approval. And within that, it's like, okay, I'm in it. And this feels really bad, but I'm going to try because I can see that I'm in this and I want to do something different, that I'm going to start to incorporate these ideas of disengagement. And disengagement means how you talk, when you talk, where you talk, and who you talk to in the process, and how often you talk about this. So we start to pull back every level of that and start to change how the engagement is, and we reduce it to as small and as infrequently as we possibly can. But in that awareness piece, I look at it as being kind of like a white knuckle. It's like, I can't, I'm just hanging on here and I'm doing this and it's shaking, but I can't really get out of the sensation. And part of what I tell them is, hey, you know what? All that is nervous system activation, and all it is sensation. It's your nervous system reacting to a stimulus. And there's nothing here other than we've got a problem to solve. The next level of disengagement is acceptance. Having the acceptance of I'm in this and nobody's going to change this for me. And that the other person is not going to change even if I do. Right. And then just resting into that and then doing the work.
That's right.
And really understanding the somatics of it, because the body awareness, I think, is paramount to making the shift. And having a willingness to have somebody hold your hand through that and help you get to that place of a higher level of stability. The third is approval. And that is something that really comes way down the line in this. And the approval is I'm in this journey. I'm learning stuff. This is not happening to me. This is happening for me. That's how my co-host used to talk about it, Charlie. This is, I can accept this in. I can be a part of this, and I don't have to have judgment of the other person in this. They are who they are. They've got their own journey to do. And this level of disengagement allows me to totally let that go and move down my own mainstream of life.
Yes.
The other model I look at this through is one of competency. And in the first stages of competency, there is unconscious incompetence. I don't know what I don't know. And I have to be able to sit in, I don't know what I don't know, and navigate that long enough with this other model working to a place of what I call conscious incompetence. This is where I'm making my mistakes.
Right.
And I'm working my way towards not making those mistakes. I have a podcast that I talk about the manhole story, and this is about falling into the manhole every time and finding my way back around the manhole.
Yes.
To a place of, okay, now I have moved from unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence, and now I am going to start into this next level of going back and forth into conscious competence.
Right.
where I got some stability in this. And that doesn't mean I'm not going to make the occasional mistake, but I know what I'm looking for. I've got a vision and I'm working the template.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the last piece of that is unconscious competence. That is that place of it's just instilled. I'm just doing it. I don't have to think about it. I'm in the groove.
That's
And
right.
again, that takes a while. And
It
people have to
does.
be
That's
willing
right.
to navigate, because getting to that place is oftentimes a lifetime endeavor.
Yes. I think the best analogy for the competency structure, and it's sort of a simple one that I think most people can relate to, is learning how to drive, right? The first time you get
Mhm.
behind the wheel of a car, you're looking at all the controls and the knobs and the buttons and the wheel, and you're like, I don't know what any of this does or is, and I have no idea. When you're a baby, you're unconscious incompetence. You don't know what you don't know. You don't know car. Now you know car. You're in this and you're aware suddenly of, oh my God, I don't know how any of this works. And then you put in the work, and it's, the first few months, it's everything is conscious. Everything you do is you're competent. You know which buttons to push, you know which levers to pull, you know how to steer, you know what pedals to press, and you're learning how to do it, and you're doing it consciously. And when you've been doing it for a while, you're just driving. You get in the car,
But
you don't think about
accidents do
anything.
happen along the way, right?
But accidents happen along the way, and now oh shit, I guess now I got to get my insurance card out, and I got to, like, how do I, right? You don't take off,
Right.
right? You take responsibility. You figure out what went wrong, and you do it differently next time. But I love that the competency scale for this work, right? That, like, you're gonna fuck this up. It's okay. You're not unconsciously competent yet. We'll get there, but
Mhm.
we're not there yet.
Right.
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 And we can help our clients point those things out and find the roadmap. Like, we're the driver's ed teacher.
Mhm.
It is, right? Yeah.
That's a good analogy. I like it.
So, shifting gears a minute, right? I mean, we've talked a little bit about parenting
Mhm.
and our responsibility in this work to our children,
Mhm.
to be the one safe parent, if that's all they've got. When you're dealing with co-parenting in particular, what do you think is really important about dealing with a high conflict co-parent? Like, this is a person you've got to stay in a relationship with for the rest of your life in some capacity. How do we do that?
So we reduce the capacity.
Yeah.
There's not that much that we have to be in relationship with them. I look at the co-parenting piece through the lens of parallel parenting. And
Mm-hmm.
when we look at it through the lens of parallel parenting, people get worried that this notion is going to be problematic, because with as long as this template has been around, not everybody in the judicial system understands it or agrees with it.
That's right.
So we want to talk about it differently. When I'm talking to my client, I'm going to talk to them about parallel parenting. We're going to have a conversation about parallel parenting, and we're going to call it that.
Yes.
But parallel parenting is a subset of co-parenting.
Mm-hmm.
And in my estimation,
Mm-hmm.
it is a do no harm model,
Yes.
because parallel parenting is child focused, it's child centric, and it has to do with the health, education, and welfare of the child.
Yes.
And this notion of I've got to communicate about everything in my life, about what you think I'm doing right, wrong, or indifferent, has got to be a part of the conversation, is frankly BS.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to happen. If my communication is put in front of a mediator, in front of a judge, in front of an attorney, in front of a minors counselor, whoever's going to take a look at this, I'm talking about the need of the child in every single aspect. And I'm not getting drawn into you're doing it wrong. I'm not getting drawn into you're cheating, you're an alcoholic, you're an addict, you're whatever.
Right.
And I am just focused on that.
Right.
You're not going to get in trouble for that, because you are communicating about the health, education, and welfare of the child. And if somebody attacks you on that, you can pull those communications out and say, really, I'm supposed to respond to that? How would you respond to that, Your Honor? I mean, that makes no sense.
That's right.
Here I've talked about this, and this. through that way of learning how to do that, because it's hard not to get engaged when somebody is attacking you personally.
100%.
That's that part of the disengagement of what somebody else thinks about it means none of my business. It doesn't matter. I don't care. It's a lie. How do you respond to a lie? It's not true. And you move on. You don't get sucked into the fight. And when that happens, the other parent who is this high conflict personality is going to keep trying to drive that bus harder and harder and harder. And when you're just sitting there and you're stable and you're talking about the health, education, the welfare, it really starts to show where the fight's at.
Right. It reveals itself. You're giving them, you're not engaging, right? You're disengaging. You're dropping the rope while also just sort of exposing it for what it is. Because when you're not engaging with it, then they start to, right? It's when we engage with it and we're fighting back and we're, pushing back and we're, essentially begging for our humanity to be seen or whatever in a way that they never have. When then we start to look crazy. But when we sort of go, okay, great, I'll see you on Thursday at 6:00, cutting through all the bullshit, right? We look like the sane one. And the abuse and the high conflict person becomes more and more exposed.
And there's much more of an organic outcome here. You're not driving the story. They're driving their own story.
That's right.
I look at this kind of through the eyes of martial arts, Aikido. And that whole notion in Aikido is you use the other person's energy against them. You don't put any effort into it. You just use their momentum to move them. And you get out of the way.
Right.
When that skill set gets developed, it can actually be fun because you can sit back and you can go, okay,
here we go.
You do it, and here it comes, and it's coming, and okay, I'm just going to step sideways here and let them face plant. Sometimes the face plant takes some time.
Right.
But I've never not see it happen.
And the only way to get there is to stop pushing against it, right?
How much energy are you expending in the defense of this, in the engagement of this?
That's right.
And that is precious energy that needs to be going to other places in your life, particularly your children, your job, your main line of work, and just being able to enjoy this blue planet that we're on.
While it's still here.
Right.
I love what you said about parallel parenting being sort of like really the only thing that matters. I always say to my clients, I don't care how amicable your divorce is. Let's start with parallel parenting because, and this is what I did wrong, completely wrong. And so I learned this the hard way, which was that, my ex and I became best friends out of the gate. We're like, we couldn't do the marriage right, but boy, are we going to do this divorce right. And everything's going to be great. And we're going to be the best co-parents in the world. And the two things that happened was our kid was 3 years old and he was fucking confused as hell. Because we said, mommy and daddy are getting divorced because we can't get along. And then here's mommy and daddy, and we're getting along great. So why are we divorced? It doesn't make sense.
It's incongruent.
Right? And so the second thing that happened was we just didn't separate. We didn't self-identify. We didn't untangle all of the web that kept us connected. And so we continued to perpetuate the same dynamics that we had in our marriage ultimately.
No boundaries.
And we had no boundaries. It was really messy. And eventually it ended up blowing up colossally. And we did have to separate. And we didn't really speak. We parallel parented only for a few years. And it was great because I could self-identify. I could individuate. I could learn who I was. And then when life shifted and we sort of started coming back together a little bit, it was a choice. It was a conscious choice. It was not a habit. And so I want everyone to have that period. I want you to have that period of self-identification, individuation, to go, who am I now outside of this relationship? And if my healed self chooses this person to be my friend, cool.
Right.
But you're not actively choosing that if you have not had that individuation time.
I am so in alignment with you with that, Kate, and I wish more people were preaching that particular piece. There's a lot of coaches out there that don't really understand this, and you clearly do, because that initial piece of parallel parenting allows for boundaries, because most of the time people that are divorcing, especially when it moves towards a high conflict piece, are boundary insufficient. They don't understand them. They're challenged. They're boundary challenged.
Yeah.
And the parallel parenting model sets boundaries. It sets boundaries for communication. It sets boundaries for transitions. It sets boundaries for travel. It sets boundaries that are clear and that we are not going to deviate from them. And once that's established, everybody knows what lanes they're in. And to your point, and I think it takes a couple of years through the divorce. My sense is it takes at least 2 years of parallel parenting to get to a point, to a choice point of going, okay, am I going to stick my foot back in that water? Yeah. And if I do, and that alligator bites my foot off, I'm never going back to that pond again.
That's right.
But we can try it, and then we can go, okay, that worked, or nope, that didn't.
That's right. And after a couple of years of working with a coach, with a therapist, right, doing the healing work, you're gonna be aware that it's an alligator biting your foot, as opposed to like, oh, this is just life, or this is, right. You're able to look at that objectively and go, oh shit, look, there it is again. Nope, right. Not again, Satan.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
It's such an important aspect. And if more professionals, and specifically judges and minors counsel and GALs, got this through their head rather than trying to force somebody to do something that they've never been able to do, would change this dynamic across the board for so many people, save people so much heartbreak, so much money, and so much wasted time.
100%. I could not agree more. Could not agree more. I feel like we could do this all day, but I want everyone to go, if you haven't already listened to the episode that Brook and I did on his podcast, head on over there. Brook, where can people find you, your work, your podcast, and all of the things?
So the podcast is the High Conflict Co-Parenting Podcast. We've been doing that for 5 or 6 years now. We got a boatload floating around. My website is highconflict.net. We have a membership site that is disengage.highconflict.net. Like yourself, we've got a series of programs out there. We've got support groups. We've got just tons of things for people to engage in on levels that they're ready to engage in. And, like we said before, listen, get educated, but don't not engage in this process of doing the work that's needed here, because nobody's going to fix this for you.
That's right. That's right. And if you don't do it, it's just going to keep going. The cycle will continue until you are ready to stop it. And
I wanted to mention too, I forgot, I've written a book, and the book is The Black Hole of High Conflict. And it's really just a walkthrough of understanding this process and of things that you can do practically to begin to change. It's a simple read. It's quick and it's easy and it's effective.
Awesome. Brook, thank you so much for coming on. I love talking to you, and I think we should do it a lot more often.
For sure. I'm in. Thank you, Kate.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Divorce Survival Guide podcast. If you like what you hear, head on over to Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen in and leave me a review. And don't forget to follow me on Instagram at The Divorce Survival Guide. I'll see you next time, and until then, remember, you, my love, deserve to be happy.